In today's video, we are going to be going over if statements, which allows you to do a whole bunch of fancy little things when it comes to displaying values on your website or even triggering certain workflows in platforms like Zapier. I'm going to be using Airtable to show you how it all works. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Connor, and on this channel I help people who cannot code build their own online businesses with no-code tools like Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing a little mini tutorial on how you can use if statements inside of Airtable to trigger certain workflows based on certain conditions being met inside of Airtable records. So understanding how you can write your own formulas inside of Airtable, and specifically how you can use if statements to create filters for certain workflows, really allows you to take setting up workflows to the next level. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I use if statements on the Unicorn Factory, and then I'm going to show you 3 different ways as to how you can write your own if statements. But before we get into it, if you want to learn more about no code, then subscribe to the channel. I make a whole bunch of videos breaking down different tools, certain workflows, and I make a whole bunch of tutorials like these that will help you get your own online business up and running. Also, if you could leave a quick like on this video, it would be very much appreciated. It helps spread this video through the internet. But let's get into it. So one way that you can use if statements is to change a way that someone submitted data inside of a form to a different format that you can then display in, for example, a profile page. One example of that is my relative rate. So when someone signs up to join the Unicorn Factory, I actually make them state what their hourly rate is, but instead of displaying their actual hourly rate, I actually use these dollar symbols to basically indicate to clients how they price their services relative to other freelancers in the same category. So in order for me to do that, I actually have to take their hourly rate and then assign a value that has either $1 sign, $2 signs, $3 or $4 signs, to then basically let that client know roughly how expensive that freelancer will be. So the way that that works inside of Airtable is that you can just jump in here and you can now go ahead and write a formula. So the way that you write this formula is you just start off by writing if, and then what you do is you open it up. And now inside of here, what you want to do is you want to state what a particular condition is in order for you to assign a value to that particular condition. So in our case, what we're looking for is if the hourly rate is less than $35, then you add a comma and then you assign a value to it. So then you say, then add the single dollar sign, otherwise 0. And so now you can see that whenever someone adds their rate, so let's say for example $10, it displays that $1 sign because that is what we have assigned as that value that gets displayed if the rate is below $35. But if we now go ahead and change it to 36, you will see that that value has now disappeared because it no longer matches that condition. And so that is how I display those particular values inside of different freelancer profiles. And you can basically create if statements for a whole bunch of different variables that you might want to display on your website. So another way that I use if statements is to ensure that I don't trigger certain workflows inside of Zapier if certain conditions are not met. So one issue that I occasionally run into with the Unicorn Factory is that we have people that just spam freelancers. So the way that I decide to deal with it is to set up a whole bunch of rules that either allow certain messages to pass through or not. So I can't dig into the specifics as to the rules that I've set up, but one thing that I can tell you is that a freelancer can report if a client is spamming them, and if they are reported to be spammers, then all of the messages that they send in the future automatically get put on hold. If they are put on hold, then you can see that here an if statement changes from true to false. And the way that this works is just by simply writing an if statement that checks whether or not this spam button is ticked or not. So the way that you'd write a formula like that is to start off again by opening up the formula field and saying if the spam field equals true. So basically what that true part means is that it is ticked. The other option is false, which basically states if the spam field is not ticked. And then what you want to do is state first what you want to happen. So in our case, if the spam button is ticked, then we do not want the message from this particular client to be sent. So what we're going to do is we are going to set this field to false. But if it's not ticked, then we will just let it go through. So we'll set it to true. And so then you can see that one is ticked and one is not ticked. And you can see, but based on that, the top record will not have their messages automatically forwarded, whereas the one below that hasn't been tagged as a spam account does automatically get their messages forwarded on. So this is not the only rule that applies. I have a whole bunch of different rules that apply as soon as someone sends a message to a freelancer. But what that will allow you to do is to just keep your workflows running as they currently are, but to filter out any of the messages where the auto send feature is disabled. So as you can see, there are two main use cases for using if statements. First of all, to manipulate data in order to display certain values on your website, like I did with my dollar symbols, or alternatively to create special filters that stop certain workflows from triggering if a certain condition is not met. But now we're going to dive into going over how you can set up your own if statements. We're going to start off with the basics and then progressively get more difficult if statements set up so that you can then apply some of the learnings and some of the things that I've got on the Unicorn Factory to your own projects. Okay, so for this particular example, I downloaded the real estate home visits Airtable template that you can get yourself if you don't have your own Airtable base to practice on. So we're going to start off real simple, where we're going to basically test if our if statements are working or not. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be writing a formula that basically tells us to pursue a lead if the new development button is ticked. Otherwise, don't pursue it if it is not ticked. So the way that we're going to do it is we're going to start off by inserting a new field to the right. And in the field type field, we're going to type in formula. Now, as soon as you have selected the formula field type, what we want to do is we want to start off by writing if, and that will then automatically bring up the function. Now, a if statement is made up of three different values. The first one is the actual condition or the logic. The second field after the first comma is the value that we want to display if that condition is met. And then the last value that is displayed is the condition that we want to display if that first condition is not met. So in our case, what we want to do is we want to say if the new development field is ticked, display a text label that says pursue lead. But if it is not ticked, then what we want to do is we want to write a text label that says don't pursue. So let's do it. First of all, we want to write our logic. And what we want to say is if the new development, so we'll just start a new development, and as you can see, the values will automatically be selectable inside of Airtable. Then what we want to do is we want to add an equal sign, because we basically want to say if this new development field equals, and then tick boxes can basically be stated as true or false. So in our case, what we want to say is the new development field is true. So what we're going to do is we're going to write true. And as you'll see, it automatically comes up with the function field. So what we're going to do is we're going to tick it. Then what we want to do is we want to display a string that says pursue lead. And so now, once we have this condition met, we will see that text label displayed. Now, if this, however, is not met, so the new development field is false, then what we want to do is we want to come up with an alternative label to display inside of this field. So what we're going to do is we're going to write don't pursue. And then when we submit this formula, you can then see that a certain field says pursue lead, the other ones say don't pursue if it's not ticked. And you can see now that whenever we change this field, it also automatically changes that particular calculation. And at its most basic, that is how you can write a very simple if statement. So again, you start off by stating the condition, then you state what you want to happen if that condition is met, and then you wrap it up with what you want to display if a certain condition is not met. Okay, and on to the next one. So the next way that you can write if statements is by using something called nested conditions. And what that basically means is you have if statements inside of if statements. Now, in this particular example, what I want to do is I want to display the dollar symbols as I did with the Unicorn Factory freelancers based on a certain price being selected as the listing price. So again, we're going to start off with by inserting a field to the right, and we're going to type in dollar value. So again, we're going to select a formula, and then we're going to write our if statement. So again, if, open bracket. Now, what we want to do is we're going to start off by saying if a house is above $295,000. So again, we're going to start off by selecting our field that has the price, so listing price, and then we are going to say is larger than 295,000. Then what we want to do is we want to select the $4 symbols. Otherwise, we are going to leave it, we're going to select false for now. And so now you can see we've got two properties here that are valued above 295,000, and you can see now that they have these dollar symbols attached to them. Now, what we can do is if we want to display the $3 symbols for any properties that are above $200,000, then we can write a new if statement that sits inside of the already existing if statement that we have written. So what we want to do here is we want to now jump into where it says false, and we want to write a new if statement in here. So again, we're going to start off by writing if, and then we are going to open it up by selecting again our listing price. And now what we want to do is we want to say if our listing price is above 200,000, then select the $3 symbol. Otherwise, we will call it false. And now you can see that the two properties valued above 295,000 have the $4 symbols, and the one property valued above 200,000 has the $3 symbols. And so what that is called a nested condition. So you can keep going on with this forever. So what I usually like to do is just copy and paste out the actual if statement, and then I just paste it into where that particular condition is set to be false. So again, just paste it in here, and now I can select a new value, which is, let's say for the sake of this example, 125,000, and we can select it to this. Then click save again, and you can now see that another value is assigned to it. And then again, just in order to make sure that all properties have values assigned to them, I can again just copy and paste it in here. And we can now say if it is larger than 0, we will say it has $1 symbol. Otherwise, we will write a label that says no price assigned. And now you can see that all of the values have their own dollar symbol attached to it based on the price that is set. And now even if we remove one of the values, we will see that a text label pops up saying that no price is assigned. So just a quick little note on working with nested if statements, specifically when working with dollar values. Now this will not work if you use the lowest value as the first if statement. Because if you said in our specific example that if the listing price is above 0, select the $1 symbol, then that condition would match for all of the different properties, and it would then automatically display the $1 symbol for all of the properties. So I'm just going to show you what specifically I mean by that. So if we change this here to if the listing price is above 0, then select the say $1 symbol, and if not, then select and so on, you'll see that that condition automatically matches all of them, meaning that it doesn't actually care what happens beyond this first statement. So the big thing to keep in mind is that if you are working with dollar amounts, to make sure that you start your if statement with the largest value and then work your way down. Okay, now we're gonna wrap things up by seeing how we can use these conditional values to basically trigger or stop certain automations from happening. So if you've watched any of my past videos, you'll know that I use views to trigger certain workflows. So what I mean by that is I can have a field here that I'm gonna call trigger automation. And then inside of this field, I have 3 options, which is one is approve, live, and reject. And so what I want to do is I want to trigger this workflow whenever the field is selected to be approved. So you'll be able to see now that I have a listing that I've got listed in here because the trigger automation field is currently set to approved. So the way that you can set these views is just by applying conditions as a filter. So in my case, the trigger automation field is equal to approved. Now on the Unicorn Factory, what I do is for most of these records, I just automatically switch them to review. But if certain field types or certain conditions are not meant, then I want to filter out those automations from starting. So for the sake of our example, what we want to do is we actually don't want to send the automation if the listing price is not set. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the automation field and we want to add an additional condition, which is when the dollar value is equal to no price assigned. Sorry, is not no price assigned. So whenever the listing price is not selected, we don't want this automation to start. So in this case, say we have a property that we want to basically send to our CRM, but it currently doesn't have a price assigned to it and we accidentally approve it, then we know that it actually won't work because we have this backup filter applied to it. And this can come in really handy when you are creating things like profile pages on your marketplaces, because if there's certain things like images that are missing, then you can basically factor that in when setting up these types of workflows. The good thing is though, that if you then after a while realize that that field is empty and you do want to assign a value to it, and you just type in 255,000 and you then jump back into the automation, you'll see that it automatically gets added and can now be automated. And so that is how you can use if statements to basically display certain types of values in whatever platforms you're using, or to trigger or filter certain types of workflows from starting based on certain conditions being met. Now, this is an incredibly useful skill to learn. It's not overly complicated, and as soon as you got the basics of it, you'll really be able to get really creative with how you write these types of if statements. Now, if you found this tutorial useful, I would very much appreciate a like on this video and also a comment down below. It helps with the algorithm. It helps spread this video through the internet. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around for the entire video, and I'll see you back here for the next one.